But if you seen some of that shit, some of the videos, shit was jumping. It looked like a whole
Party.
It was a party.
Yeah, man.
Man, they didn't know we had spades. People didn't know how to play spades.
God damn, these niggas didn't know how to play spades.
It's crazy. It's a whole nother generation.
Shout
that
out
don't
to
know.
Ricky. Hey, man, if you don't vote for Michelle Obama, you're a traitor to our people.
Michelle ain't running.
I mean, sorry. What's the lady name? What's the lady name? Tell me her name. You gotta say the name. Yeah, you gotta say, give me my money before we give you our vote.
Right.
Yeah.
Give me my money.
What's happening? This Gator,
It's your boy Mamba.
and it's the Gator and Mamba show.
So, welcome to another great edition of two black men putting it out there, talking about life, love, and everything else under the sea.
Man, we ain't talking about no love.
We gonna be talking about some love.
We get some women in here.
Well, obviously, nigga, I ain't talking love to you.
Well, good. I'm a little uncomfortable, man.
Shit, let's start that off right. As usual, I want to ask you, how was your weekend, man?
My weekend this weekend was pretty playerish. You know me, my man. He got his club. Shout out to the Peacock Lounge.
Peacock Lounge.
Yeah. It's a little private club. You know what I mean. We sat there, we chilled. You know what I mean. You know, got catered to. It was lovely. It was lovely. It was a lovely time. You know what I mean. So I was in heaven.
Yeah,
how about you?
I definitely went to that too. And I must say I had a great time, man. I had a great time with just gentlemen, with ladies, with the fact that we can play games and listen to music, and it wasn't none of that extra. It was just what a gentleman, if you will, want to chill out and what you expect. Just lounging out and having some laughs with your homeboys or whatever. We had some people that didn't know. We had spades. People didn't know how to play spades.
God damn, these niggas didn't know how to play spades.
It's crazy. It's a whole nother generation.
Shout
that
out
don't
to
know.
Ricky. Who the fuck don't know how to play spades, man? But
Apparently Ricky didn't.
Obviously. He did win.
Nigga, you went one with him.
We won, nigga. Winning is winning, man.
Yeah, I hear you. But nah, man, straight up though, I was bouncing from table to table. We did a little poker and everything like that. We had some dances. We had just a great time with cats just chopping it up and networking.
Oh, it's like some people dancing and having a good time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's one of the
Dry
things.
snitching and shit.
Another thing. Nigga, I didn't go into detail.
Yes, nigga.
I said dancing.
Okay.
We had a DJ,
Good.
shit like that.
Okay, so you was getting it. You was on the dance floor getting it in.
That's
what
right.
You say.
That's all I'm saying.
I got you recorded too.
I hate the rest. But also what I did, I actually had another opportunity. So I was invited to a couple of younger folks' birthdays, and it's like Gen Z had kids, so I was at the Gen Z kids' birthday, yet I was still invited in that aspect. So I actually had a good opportunity to talk with a lot of young folks, especially my kinfolk, and just line them up and figure out what you trying to do. And I actually found out one of my younger cousins, he actually want to do some marketing.
Okay.
So just talking with him back and forth and really picking his brain, asking him specifically, why is it marketing? Like what makes you want marketing? Why not accounting or some shit like that? Really just trying to see the seriousness about it. And he was just telling me how he draws and he does some art and all this other kind of stuff or whatnot. And it led me to the whole creative aspect or whatnot. And I was like, I illustrated. I was like, so if you had a pen or whatever, and do you think you could make people want to have this pen or whatnot? So he was like, yeah. So I'm gonna intern him. I'm gonna have an internship with him every so often and whatnot, so he can be in here and so he can learn the ropes and whatnot.
So did you tell him the difference between working for himself or working for somebody? Do he want to work for a company or do he want to create his own marketing firm?
I know those are some of the conversations that I want to have with him. My
pretty
conversations
important,
with
my
all
man.
my young people is always about doing your own shit. Even my daughter, I'll be like, you want to create opportunities to work for yourself. She does hair and all that stuff, but she don't like doing hair, but she can do hair.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that could be a side hustle. She's like, I don't like it well enough to do that, but I'm still keep feeding stuff in their head. So it's like, you got talents. Let's tap into your talents, and I ain't gonna push you or whatever, but I'm gonna introduce you and let you know that you got opportunity.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was one thing that I'm real happy to keep kind of doing in regards to just the young folks, my people, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
had a good weekend in that
Yeah.
capacity, man.
That's what I'm talking about. So I know we wanted to start off today, man, by getting to that DNC convention. You know what I mean? Let's get into that a little bit. I got some shit to talk.
It was in Chicago, wasn't it?
I believe so. Didn't they have some riots or something? Didn't them people crashed through the
I
gates?
don't know. I think they had a lot of shit because in Chicago, I know it's a lot of back and forth going on. They got something in Chicago called Little Palestine. Literally, it's a place called Little Palestine. So there was a bunch of that funk that was going back and forth with that kind of issue or whatnot.
Also, since you was talking about Chicago, it was a young man on TikTok, and he was saying that hey man, the gangs, y'all don't even let y'all each other go through y'all hood, but y'all is it Palestine? I don't know who moved in, Venezuelans. I don't know who it was. Right, that came into and took over their neighborhood and ostracizing them. Is that a word? Ostracizing them?
Yeah. I think that's one thing that from what I gather, a lot of Chicago people got a problem with, especially the fact that I've heard. Now I'm not sure, and me and you, we ain't all politics. We just kind of talk what we hear and talk it through or whatever. So somebody was like, yeah, they got these people from whether it's Mexico, South America, whatever the case, that come in, and now they're trying to give them checks when people in Chicago or whatever is suffering and shit like that. But you want to give these people who coming in who ain't got no homes and shit like that opportunity.
Well, wait, that ain't just happening in Chicago.
Yeah,
that's happening across the whole United States.
That's right.
Look at Minnesota. It's Somali heaven.
We digress. We digress because we're talking about the convention.
Sorry, going there again.
We're talking about the convention.
All right, well, what you got?
No, you said you got a lot to say.
Nigga, play something.
It's everybody's speeches, and the speeches are from
this
Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, what's her name? OCP. What you call her? What you call her? What's her name? The Latina lady. Yeah, that.
I don't know who that is. Seems like initials to me.
How we ain't plugged in like that.
But anyways, the one thing that I noticed immediately about this convention, right, is they spent some money. They got down. They had rappers. They had singers. They went all out. And my only thing I say is, woo, boy, every 4 years they'll go all out until the day after. Until the day after. They'll spend that money, and day after, Black who? Mm-hmm. Do you stay in this country? Do you live here?
But if you seen some of that shit, some of the videos, shit was jumping. It looked like a whole
party.
It was a party.
Yeah, man.
Man, it was bopping. Like the only contrast that the Republican whatever had was what's it called? Hulk Hogan stretching his shirt.
Wait,
Come on, brother.
Wait a minute. So Republican got one too? I thought this was everybody.
No. Republicans had they shit in like July, I think. Something like July.
So Democrats have a party every 4 years, and then Republicans have a party every 4 years. And whoever has the best party wins the election.
I think that's looks like that's how it goes.
So whoever can get it down.
And look like this squad about to win because they had Ludacris.
Oh boy, they go get that black vote, huh?
Didn't they have Meg, y'all? Was it Meg at that one, or was she at the something with something else? Okay, she was at something else. Well, still, I'm like, they got Meg there. They had twerking and everything. So
I seen. I also heard. I know y'all be like, why this nigga on TikTok all the time? Somebody else on TikTok was like, hey man, if you don't vote for Michelle Obama, you're a traitor to our people.
Michelle ain't running.
I mean, sorry. What's the lady's name? What's the lady's name? Tell me her name. You gotta say the name so I don't
Kamala.
Kamala. Sorry, Kamala. If you don't vote for Kamala, you against the people. And I'm like,
That's like Joe Biden saying, if you don't vote for him, you ain't black.
I didn't know what the fuck the nigga was saying. It looked like he was trying to devote people into voting. I'm like, man, if you don't vote, and I ain't talking about just black people, right? I'm talking about the bottom. Mm-hmm. If the bottom hold their votes until the country do something for them, they'll do something for them. I promise you. If you just say, nah, we ain't voting until you give us, our proper dues.
That's the move.
They'll do it, right? Because they want that vote, right? All them people together in one, they'll do it. But I don't know why people ain't getting together and doing it. But I'm telling you, you hold your vote, they'll make something happen. They want that vote.
Yeah, because they're gonna promise the shit out of everything.
Yeah.
Until it happens, until that final day, until you vote.
Yeah, you gotta say, give me my money before we give you our vote.
Right.
Yeah.
Give me my money.
Yeah, please, please.
So we talking about this national convention, and it was very. We had Michelle Obama, we had Barack there, et cetera, et cetera. It was something that people really loved. I tuned into it every now and then or whatever, just through some of the social media aspects and whatever. I was like, oh, they having a fucking party there. I actually wanted to go in that aspect, like that shit was jumping. Again, I say in contrast, when I scroll through and see the Republicans, I was like, y'all gotta loosen up, man. Y'all gotta
that hate tighten you up, boy.
Yeah,
you
that
hate
hate
people
got
so
you
much.
tighten the fuck up or something.
Loosen your
Relax,
shoulders a bit.
goddammit.
Yeah.
Shit, take a shot. But anyway, I know there was we have someone here who's a guest who actually went to the convention, and he is currently the mayor of Brooklyn Park in Minnesota, Hollies Winston. So Hollies Winston, Mayor Hollies Winston, can you come to the podium, please?
Hollies, what's happening?
How you doing, brother?
It's good to have you on, man. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, we appreciate
Of
you.
course, man. Of course. We'll see if I have a job after all that stuff y'all talking about.
Hey, we shit talk. We literally put a disclaimer. We don't follow this shit.
So, I mean, we don't know anything we said is accurate.
Right.
I'm joking, y'all. My pleasure to be here, though, man.
So, man, thanks for coming on, man. I wanted to tap in. I know I've been knowing you for a long time, and we have a understanding and brotherhood here, just in general. And I thought it was very pertinent for two reasons. For one, because you're in the politics, you're a mayor, and you're all around that and stuff, and that ain't our cup of tea for the most part. But also because in terms of we were working with you in the city, Brooklyn Park, at one time, and there was that little bubble. So let's have that be in the second half of the conversation. But the first half is, I know we was talking shit about the convention. I know you, I remember you called me, you told me you had a good time, but go on ahead and say your 2 cents about it.
Yeah, I would just say, just so folks understand, like the DNC stands for Democrat, I want to say National Convention. And so each party, right? So the Republicans have theirs, and it's really to agree on who that final presidential candidate is going to be. Right, so you have at the state level too, and they'll say who's going to be the senator, who's going to be the Congress. You have all this structure, and then it rolls up into who's going to be the president. So the Republicans have a process where they determine it was Trump. Democrats have one where they decided it's going to be Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, right? And this was really to help a lot of people who are involved in the party, who do a lot of volunteering, who do a lot of the work. It was help them to understand why. Kamala's going to be that choice, why Walz is the choice, but it's also to introduce them to the policies and help them understand where the party is going, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important in that. I will say that it is important increasingly when you go there, the country has gotten so racialized in that, unfortunately, in that when you go to the DNC, you see a amount of African Americans there many times that is disproportionate to our numbers across the country. And the reason you see this is because the Democrats have overwhelmingly said, we want you in the party. Now, we can get into policy. That's a different thing. What policies get enacted is something different. And the Republicans have kind of said, you can come in here, but you're not very welcome when you start talking about many of the issues that you want to talk about, right? If we come in there talking about family values, they're like, oh, yeah, we get family values. If you say, okay, but... And we
equity.
Equity or ownership or or remove some of these laws and these issues that have caused problems in the past and currently, we don't need to have that conversation, right? So there's one party that we have been part of because of that, and I don't need to get into history, but there's a deal that was specifically struck with Roosevelt and then later with LBJ, which is why our community tends to go towards that party, and people will leave that out or they just don't know that piece. Doesn't mean things are perfect, but that's why you kind of saw overall the diversity in the Democrats, is because the Democrats are saying, look, you may not agree with everything, but we have this big tent where whatever you are, if you're a little different, we're not going to shun you and come up with policies that try to destroy you. Now some people will disagree with that, right? But that's what they generally try to project.
So let me ask you a question. Then, I understand that the Republican Party has an outlook that they don't necessarily want people who look like me in their party. However, Democrats have a similar policy where they will invite me in, but they're not going to actually make policies to do anything for me.
And I would say that that's twofold, right? I think if you know the history of this country, right? From day one, it was not set up for us to be equal partners.
Right.
We have to deal with that history. Now, that doesn't mean we can't be equal partners. But it does mean that even if somebody welcomes you in, they may not know the appropriate way, or they still may be dealing with some of the racism that the rest of the country is dealing with. And this is why politics is difficult, because you see some of the stuff I do in Brooklyn Park that tries to help everybody, regardless of race, creed, socioeconomic condition.
Right.
Yep.
We have put money in places where people who have not had opportunities have opportunities now, right?
Absolutely.
And we believe that raises everybody up. But that doesn't mean that everyone is going to see the world that way. And some of that comes from so you have to understand that whatever party you're in, you're going to deal with racism. But as a black person, if you're voting as a black person, you're really concerned about the issues that affect the community, you have to make an educated decision of which party do I think is going to do the best and which is going to be welcoming. And going in, you have to know that both sides are going to struggle with kind of this racism we've dealt with since day one over here, right? So that's just a very real reality that we, as a community, have to deal with. But the other thing I would say is this, is that, and I know you gentlemen, and you know me, as a community, and people may not like me saying this, but as a community, I know y'all don't see yourself as victims. You've gone through some difficult times, and every step of the way you said, what do we have to do to make this thing work, right? And so I think our leadership has increasingly say, whatever party we choose, I happen to be a Democrat, but whatever party we choose, once I get in there, I'm not a victim. So you're going to understand very clearly what my community needs to succeed. And I've got to realize that other communities have a say in this big tent party. So we're going to have to negotiate, or we're going to have to work out a platform that works to raise everybody up. And so that's kind of my politics is, as mayor, I can't necessarily focus on one community. So I say, well, how do we come up with policies that lift everybody up, that make everybody safer, right? And so I think part of my issue with the leadership in our community, and I'm not throwing all of our leadership under the bus, right, is that we have not made the clearest case in terms of this is exactly what my community is looking for. I know what you're telling me my community needs. You're saying my community needs this program that gives away X amount of income a month, right? And there's a lot of black people saying, hey, I get that. Or people are saying, well, y'all need more food stamps. Or y'all need more of this type of affordable housing. And our community is increasingly saying, no. My mother was on that. My grandmother was on that. Yeah. I don't want that.
I know more. Right? I know more people, black, African, et cetera, that would rather be like, no, we're not asking you to give us shit. We just saying this is what it
Even
is.
The playing field.
Yeah, give me the playing field. Back the hell up so we can do it. Nobody's asking for a handout. We don't want that, and that's the vast majority.
And that's the thing that I agree on. But I think there needs to be more leaders that are able to say, look, increasingly the black community is saying, those programs are necessary for some, but I don't want to be on those for generations. And I want to be able to stand on my own too. And I want a lifeline to be able to understand how that works. I want my family to be stable, right? I want to know that as a guy, I'm going to be able to take care of my family. And I want to know that my son, whether he goes to college or whether he enters a trade, he's got a future ahead of him, right? And so I think it's kind of, as a community, if our leadership pivots hard in that direction, then the party has no choice to say, okay, we hear you. So what do those policies look like? Because now you're saying as a community, we went through some difficult times, but we're telling you to pivot and we're going to support you in those policies. I don't know how
what's the
many.
plan?
I don't know how many of our specific leadership are actually, even in churches, when I go to churches, right? Now, I'm not throwing any church under the bus, but I go to these churches and I hear churches saying, women, don't pick these no good men and this and that and blah, blah, blah. But how often am I hearing them say, hey, how do we, no matter what you believe, how are we building something that strengthens our families?
Right.
Right.
Period.
Right.
That's
right.
the
Family's
conversation.
the cornerstone
That's
of
the
our
conversation.
You don't get
Yeah.
along with them? Okay, now look, I'm on a podcast, so I'll be frank. Is he beating your ass? Get out.
Right.
Right? But was it an argument, or y'all don't have an understanding? Or to the guy, y'all had an argument and it's a misunderstanding? That doesn't mean walk. How y'all gonna figure that out? Because if you got kids, they're depending on you to create that stability for you to go to the next level. So I think those are the conversations that I think we have kind of sometimes gotten away from. And it could be I'm up north and down south, they're like, hey, we own this, right? But even in Chi or other places, right, I'm not always hearing those conversations from the leadership. I'm hearing them from our community, right? But I'm not always hearing it reflected in policy.
Great point.
And that's important.
Let me ask you this then. So do you believe that in our community, more leaders need to get together to be on the same page, or is everyone kind of doing their own thing and introducing policies and or procedures that they believe is going to help our community, but not necessarily speaking with everybody else to combine thoughts to say, hey, this is what the whole community needs? Because the churches may have a different opinion, and our local government may have a different opinion, and our fellas on the streets might have a different opinion, and they're needed as well, right? Your gang member leader, all that. Everybody who's a part of our community needs to be involved in growth of our community.
I think so. I would say I agree. I think there needs to be more voices brought to the table, right? And I think there needs to be a different model of leadership. But I think there's a number of factors, right? And so I have an I'm not going to go into my organization that much, but I have an organization, Legacy Coordination Network, right?
What's it called?
Legacy Coordination Network.
Thank you.
Advocate, right? And so, we've got all these different voices in the African diaspora, actually, and within the African American community as well, right? And many are going their own direction, and they're not really having conversations as to what is the community actually looking for. And the other issue is that, especially in a state like Minnesota, you got to look at where funding comes from, right? So if funding is coming from donors that are not necessarily connected to community, and the donors are saying, well, affordable housing is the issue, and this is the issue, and that's the issue. As that money flows, a lot of the black organizations are going to say, well, we have to tackle these issues because this is where the money is coming from. They're paying us to address these issues, right? So we have to start, and we've had this conversation, you got to start having institutions that the black community is funding or very much behind. Maybe it doesn't have to be 100%, but very much behind, because when it's funded by you and when the leadership reflects the community, they're going to say, I like that idea you're talking about, it's cute, but that's secondary to this issue. And this is the issue that's going to get people ignited. This is the issue that we want to talk about, right? So it's not necessarily one thing that is going to solve it, but I do think there's time for another type of leadership. And there needs to be a focus on building these resources internally so that we can control our voice and we can control the issues that we attack. Because if you're taking money from somebody else, they're going to say, whether I'm a nonprofit or not, I need a return on investment. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm paying you. I need my ROI, right? I mean the right thing, but I still need my ROI.
Yep.
So in that, would you, and this is a transition question, but in that, would you say in that capacity what MIB, Men in Black, is trying to do, has worked with other organizations, whatever, is attempting to do in order to bring that element together so we're self-sufficient, to move in that direction?
Mm-hmm. I think that, my understanding of MIB has always been, we want to be the group that the community trusts, and we come in and we calm a situation down, we de-escalate, and people immediately understand where we're coming from. We've had some of that in the past, right? And that's got broken up. And I think somebody trying to establish something saying, look, ultimately, within our community, we are very much responsible for our safety, for how we treat one another, for the outcomes that come from our own institution. I think you guys are very much in line with that. Now, in some ways, that's a little nerve-wracking to people because people say, well, wait a minute. We've always come in from the outside and we've said, this is how y'all gonna act. This is how y'all gonna treat one another. And y'all are kind of saying, look, we are willing to take responsibility for that, good and bad. And you've had to deal with some of that, right? But ultimately, we know the players to bring to the table. We know how to help solve these situations, and we want to just help solve the situation. I think that type of infrastructure has always been necessary, but I think I'll leave it at this. I think a lot of times people will come from, outside of the United States, they'll move here and they'll be like, why haven't y'all established this already?
Right.
And many times it's like, well, we have, and then every time we've tried to establish it, it's been taken down through some legal means or just through brute force, right? And so we've learned to evolve with this, and now we're finally coming together to figure this stuff out, so you have to give us time. Whereas, if you're coming over here from somewhere else, right, you have been doing things, even if you had to deal with colonization, you have been doing things traditionally some ways for thousands of years. So there's an understanding there.
Yeah.
Every time we tried to build that, people were like, no, you need to do it another way. So I think it's critical that we do it, but I also people have to understand kind of people haven't seen it, so it makes them nervous in terms of what is being done.
Excellent.
Mayor, I'll tell you, I was set to argue with you today. Me and you ain't arguing in a minute, but I'm agreeing with everything you're saying today. I mean, you
Which
ain't
is
said,
rare.
Yeah, I know
It's
you ain't
rare
said
as
nothing I
fuck
can
right
argue
now.
with. I'm looking for an argument. I'm just like, just say something. But goddamn, you
I'm
said
gonna be
everything
honest.
on point.
I'm gonna say we on camera, so you want to look a certain way.
See, now you want to argue. Now you want to argue. Okay. Yeah.
So let's go in history in terms of why brought you here. Thank you for educating us in terms of what most of us don't know in terms of politics and so on and so forth. I know I'm going to be tagging you in with training and educating a lot of our agents in regards just to community politics and things of that nature, and what value that means. Oftentimes when it comes to the 4-year thing, when everybody with the president, it gets so blown up, and we are just like, I don't care, right? But you have actually taught he and I actually in regards to what the benefit of local politics, what that means to your everyday life or whatever. So I want to bring you in and start to educate a lot of our agents in that regard, and just a lot of the community just in general. But so we saw what's called an RFP a few years ago. We saw an RFP for what's called violence interrupters for Brooklyn Park. The city of Brooklyn Park put that out. And they were like, before there was another organization that was that y'all contracted with. And at the time, the community was not necessarily feeling that particular organization. So it was brought to our attention to step in and show them what we got. And in that presentation to the city council and everything, we represented the fact that we're not presenting ourselves as security. We're not security, anything like that. We're presenting ourselves as exactly what you asked for.
Right.
And we did that. And then after that, there was a bunch of quietness, some scrutiny, and then all of a sudden we're this horrible organization that's practicing security, if you will, without a license and da-da-da and all this other kind of dramatic shit. My question is, you were aware of some of that, right? Was there any type of feedback? Because I know we presented.
Well, first ask the man, legitimately, did you feel as if we presented ourselves as a security company?
Yeah, I think what I can say is that when you presented, it was more on the de-escalation tip, right? And I think for us, when we look at someone who's going to come in and be a violence interrupter, no violence interrupters in the past have been security. So that really didn't enter our mind. I think our understanding was more, can people come into the community, quickly establish rapport, engage in some de-escalatory techniques, work with law enforcement to understand what's going on with, different intel, help provide that intel. And I think the majority of our council, because I believe it was, I don't know, 5 to 7 or 5 or 6 to 7 or 5 to 6 or something like that, right? I think the majority of council walked away feeling that that's what, MIB could do, right? Because ultimately that's what we were looking for. There never was for us a security element. And if we had felt that security was necessary, right, I think we would have scrutinized all of that information. Right. But given that the violence interrupters we had in the past didn't have that security element, because we're not asking people to be security guards. We're not asking for that aspect. We're asking for people who can provide a presence, who can kind of de-escalate things as they happen, and then who can work with law enforcement to help people understand what's going on in the community, but to de-escalate it and to build a rapport. I think those are the major things that we were ultimately looking for. And when y'all gave your presentation, I can't speak for all of the council, but I feel like the council felt like, okay, these are the folks that can do it, in addition to some of the wraparound programming that you guys were talking about with mental health and, different women's groups and domestic violence and stuff like that. We were kind of saying somebody who can plug in our community into these different resources is ultimately what we were looking for, right? And so we brought a lot of that in-house in our city. Because we've learned from all of that, right? And we've said, okay, we're going to bring this in-house because we feel like we can do that model as a city. But that's ultimately what we were looking for.
So I don't know what you can say, but I'm gonna say what changed that direction in your
well, I can be upfront. I think when we heard, we just heard that y'all were under investigation, right? For we didn't know it was for security services or for what particularly. We knew that you guys were under investigation. And so as a city, when we're deploying someone out there to do this type of work, we can't have any, there can't be anything under a haze, for lack of a better word, right? And so when we heard that information, there was some due diligence done on part of the city, and we said, okay, it looks like it's a legit investigation. We're going to have to back away from this and go in a different direction. So we went in a different direction to try to deploy that model. So I think for us, that's what happened, is that we wanted to make sure that when we deployed those resources, people trusted them. They didn't feel like there was any investigation or anything untoward. So that's why we kind of moved in the direction that we did. Unfortunately, in a city role, that's what we have to do, sure. Right? Because the residents are kind of saying, well, we want to know that anything that's deployed out there, we want to know it's copacetic. And we say, we understand that, right?
Did you hear anything specific, any dialogue, any conversation, communication specific that said, oh, yeah, besides there's an investigation, any detail in that regard?
I heard there was an investigation, and I don't want to get too into details. I heard that there was some negative things that were being alleged, right? And so we didn't pull back because of the negative things that were said, right? We pulled back because of the investigation that was happening, right? Because I think people kind of knew from seeing y'all's work and what you've done, they kind of knew your reputation in the community and the streets. But because of that active investigation, that's why we had to move in the direction that we moved.
How do you feel about the overall decision and compared to, let's say, today and what could have been established back then, but then and now? How do you feel about that?
Keep in mind, the investigation is over.
It's over, right?
Done.
Right. So what, are you asking, like, what would have happened if you'd come on board, or are you asking?
How do you feel the city, what we presented, how we have kind of worked on certain other elements, if you will? How do you feel that professionalism, all that, how that would have played as compared to whatever rumors, whatever allegedness was said, as compared to nowadays and the status of Brooklyn Park?
Yeah, and like I said, I can't remember, the vote was like 5 to 7 or 6 to 7, right? And what I will say is that I think overall, I have faith in in what we had decided as a council, that if you guys had come on board, had not been under investigation, right, things would have gotten deployed correctly. We would have probably learned from that model quite a bit. I think certain systems would have been deployed. It would have worked out. I think we were able to pivot, right? But I think based on the council's vote too, I think that professionalism would have been there, right? But politics is a dirty business a little bit in some regards. Not in terms of all the electeds are dirty, but sometimes, and you guys know this, there's people behind the scenes that have, and I'm not even talking about the board or the AG's office, but there's people behind the scenes who are competing against you, right? Who have
Skin in the game.
Who have some skin in the game that want a very different outcome, right? And it's not always what's in the best interest of the community. Sometimes I feel like people feel like it's what's in the best interest of their back pocket is what I'll say there, right? But I think the board did what they felt was necessary, and I feel like the AG's office, now that I understand the final resolution, right, that occurred, I would say maybe in some ways what y'all went through, I know was probably hell and it hurt, but I think in some ways, ultimately, that's how we want people to deal with our community, is to say, look, I think we don't think this is being done correctly. And when you go through the whole process, at the end of the day, for them to say, look, this is what we need. We need you to do this, we need you to do this, and we need to do this. Rather than, in the past, people would have brought the hammer completely down.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And I think some of it, and it's hard for people to look at this, but sometimes when you're going to court, it doesn't feel like it, but sometimes that's you having a conversation saying, well, this is what we're saying. And they're saying, well, this is what we're seeing, right? And for them to come out of conversation basically saying, okay, we've had this conversation. This is what we're requesting. You can go on and operate, continue to operate under this understanding. Ultimately, our community is asking for more and more of that, right? Like, look, if we don't, maybe we got it right, maybe we got it wrong. If you think we got it wrong, let's have a conversation so that we can continue to build and operate and contribute as tax-paying people, as a business that pays taxes, as a business that employs a hell of a lot of people. We want to be able to continue to contribute. So how do we create a situation where we can work this out going forward? Yeah. We have not seen that grace in the past. So I have to give credit to the AG's office, to Keith Ellis's AG's office, for saying, okay, fine, we get it. We're gonna move forward in this direction, because that grace has not been given in the past. I know that y'all probably feel a little different, right? But from I saw the tight smile, like, but
I've talk me some shit.
Yeah, but I will say that in the past, it's been done, finished, right? So I'm happy that people get to have those jobs. You guys get to move forward. You get to operate, and ultimately, I think it's an opportunity to create something that folks have not seen that is very, very effective in the community. And that, I think, is what excites me about that business model, right? Is that in some ways they helped you define it, you're right?
Yes.
You may not want to hurt it, but you said, okay, fine, right? But now it's defined in a different direction where people say, no, you guys say, well, no, we can get the work done. We'll just do it this way.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
I got one final question for you, my man. Where were you when George Floyd was killed?
I was, that's a tough one, because, I went to sleep that night sick. I didn't know what it was. Something in my soul was off. I called in, I told the Trace, I was like, I'm going in. I don't feel good. Hadn't been drinking, y'all. Doing nothing crazy.
Wasn't the bourbon.
Yeah, wasn't the bourbon. Wasn't the bourbon, but
It ain't never the bourbon.
It wasn't the bourbon. But I woke up the next day feeling like something was just off. And then I heard the news, right? And then I was like, man, what am I fitting to do on this thing, man? I think I wrote something, and I was just kind of like, I don't know what I'm going to do on this, right? And then I actually got a call from you on some stuff, right? And that's how I kind of ended up getting involved in my own way. But it was, it was.
You should be a little bit more transparent. Right on the front street, right in the thick of things.
He probably shouldn't be transparent.
I'm not getting that transparent.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I can be open with the story now, right? But I mean,
I always trying to get somebody to draw snitch on
Got
themselves.
it.
No, there's nothing to dry
He
snitch.
got
I'm
a
not.
call, and it was Darnell Frazier that was
Yeah.
involved, and I had a selective amount of individuals that I can call. I called him, and that was a wrap. So
Yeah, and so I think Miss Frazier was dealing with threats from her own community and from without the community, and she just needed a presence there that was gonna, I think, help make her safer and just provide some guidance in terms of all these resources and things that were being thrown at her. And so I think we were able to serve in that capacity.
Yep.
And help provide that. I believe we helped, but you'd have to ask her. I believe we provided that feeling of safety, and I think it was to a point where her and her family couldn't necessarily stay at that
we pulled him out.
that house, and we raised some money and made sure they had another place to stay, right? And so that was my contribution because I felt like a lot of people were doing a lot of the other stuff, but I was like, this is Darnell was a key witness, and what was she, 17 or 16?
17.
She was 17 at the time, and I think people didn't realize how young she was to be at the center of changing the world. And I'll be honest, a lot of policing, I think in some ways has changed for the better because she took that video. She let people know what was going on. And so I think a lot of people outside of the police, but I think there's people in the police. I think even with our own police department in Brooklyn Park, people said, we have got to find a way to build a better rapport with all communities, right? So she's kind of a seminal figure in the movement. I don't think people will know that, right? But it was our honor to, I guess, we provide security out there. You were literally showing me how to
You are aware there's been several hundred killings by police officers since then.
There will continue to be, right? And I think progress is not going to be measured in terms of what happens within a year. I think it's going to be measured over time. What I can tell you in our city, right, given our police chief, who I give a lot of credit, is that there is a better understanding of how to interact with the community, and because of that, people are trusting the police enough to where they're starting to talk about domestic violence, where before they were like, I can't talk to you about domestic violence because you're coming here and escalate stuff, right? So I think there will be police departments that say we're going back to what we used to do, and I think there are police departments who say there's got to be a better way to do this, because at the end of the day, we want to make people safe, and if people don't trust us in this regard, we can't be safe. So I think she's seminal in that.
Chief, what's his name? What's Chief? Is it Bruley?
Bruley, yeah.
Bruley. We fuck with him.
I was just about to say,
Man,
man,
we fuck with him, man.
Me and police, we don't get along. But your police,
I fuck with him, man. I like that dude.
Yeah,
I like that dude.
He's a good person. I think
He's the first cop ever to me that I've experienced where when we sat down and talked about how we gonna make change, it wasn't a point a finger at you, what you gonna do. It wasn't a, this is how we gonna do. It's like, hey, let's work together. And he mentioned it. He said, our children. And he said, our children. He was talking about black and brown kids too. It's like our children. I was like, whoa, he sees shit as a community. So I fucks with him.
Yeah, I think, and I'm not gonna say that's rare because I'm not gonna throw I'm not gonna throw police under the bus like that, given that I do trust our police department. When I say I trust our police department, it could always blow back in my face, right? But I'm saying that, I'm putting that on the line because I do actually trust them.
Okay.
To solve the problems.
Mayor.
You could be right. You could be right.
Trust my police. They're mine. I trust them.
It's all good.
If I didn't look, I'm gonna be honest. You know me. If I didn't trust them, there'd be a way I would talk around it, right? But I have seen how they operate, right? I've seen the statistics, and I've seen how the community is slowly but surely saying we trust to resolve these things. We've got different programs in place where before people would call the police, now they'll call a mental health resource, and they'll come and de-escalate the situation. So, and they had to be on board with that happening to make it happen, right? So, I do feel like we have a police chief that's really trying to make it work.
So we definitely need more conversations and or just relationship building when it comes to MIB has always opened our doors like, hey, let's sit down and talk to MPD, Brooklyn Park PD, or whatever, because ultimately we just want safety so that people
in
can
our
thrive.
community.
People
we
can
want
thrive
people to stop dying in our community.
That's right. Number fucking one.
Yeah.
So just putting it out there, y'all should know the conversation needs to be had. And you got organizations and community members or whatever that sit down and try to work shit out and figure shit out together.
Because don't nobody know Lil Boo Boo better than I do.
Okay.
All right, so
Hey, I'm gonna say this.
You
I
ain't
will
gonna
say
get- you
this.
ain't gonna get time
I will,
from the suburbs,
I will
you know.
say. I will say this is that the relationship that historically we've had with the police as a community, right? And some people want to deny it. I don't deny facts, right? But you know, you talk to my father, you talk to my grandparents, you talk to my great grandparents in the past, right? There just was not this wonderful relationship between our community and the police. But I will tell black folks that you pay taxes, right? You pay taxes, so you deserve to have a police
your ass
force. You deserve to have a police force that respects you, that understands how you operate, that understands and knows and this is my other issue, that knows you at a personal level. They're getting out the car, they're talking to you, they're going to events, they know the family that, you know, we want to get to a point where they know the family that has the autistic kid who may respond in a certain way, and in some place the police will say, well, that's a problem. Well, you want to have a police partner that says, no, we know the kid, we know the family, let's call the family, we can de-escalate this situation. You pay tax dollars, so you deserve to have that level of service so that your family doesn't feel like it's under assault from different areas,
But
right?
you said a police force. Does it have to be a police force, or could it just be a force?
I would say you have to, the number one responsibility of a city is public safety, right?
Yes.
And so for our city, we find that the police works. I would leave it up to other cities to determine that. I think that the police will tell you this, the police are not the only solution to many of these issues that they're dealing with.
Right.
There
There
you
needs
go.
to be
Yep.
resources for social workers. There need to be mental health. There needs to be people that do what MIB does. There needs to be all sorts of players that are there because it's really a village effort. And the police will often tell you, I'm showing up at home sometimes to resolve stuff that I cannot resolve.
Right.
And I need a resource that can help me so that I can actually deal with some of the really dangerous, crazy situations that you as a community don't want to deal with and
Don't
you
wanna
shouldn't be
deal with.
dealing
Right,
with,
right.
right? So I think they would even agree with you. And I think most people who are sane, right? Not people that are way off into the boot jack thugs and all that, but your average sane person who stepped back and look at how society actually works, they would say this is ultimately a team effort. I give you an example.
Yeah.
So you know the Zane corridor where Zanewood is at, and then you got Huntington Place.
Yep.
That area has had its fair share of problems. It's getting better. We know that a lot of that is related to economic opportunity and things for kids to do.
Yep.
So we had a fight, and the council just mostly came on board. You know, there's one city councilor I'm disappointed in, but the majority came on board, right? And they said, if the kids ain't got nothing to do there, and we have the opportunity to put a $10 million facility that gets them basketball, that gets them access to computers, that gets them access to school, to job pipeline, we're going to put that facility there. Now, in the past, that $10 million would have went to the golf course, it would have went to a new park, it would have went to somewhere else where they're not struggling with these issues. And it was one brother that was fighting this, right? He was going hard against it. And I said, Chief Bruley, what do you think? Do you think this will help in terms of public safety?
You know who that brother is.
I know
huh?
exactly who that.
Yeah.
I was finna say his name, but I
Yeah,
thought,
we ain't gotta say that.
B.A.N..
We ain't gotta say that.
Yikes.
Yeah.
B.A.N..
So we were saying, do you think this will help with getting kids on the right track and over time pushing down crime? He got up there and he said, absolutely. He said it in the way he says it, right? But I think my point is that it's not just going to be the police solving this problem. It's going to be a number of partners coming together. And so as a city, we said, well, let's put this facility here so that this next generation that's coming up has all these positive options to do positive things, right? So I think most people who are sane, who actually understand the game, right, are going to say, no, there's no way that we think the police should solve all of this. And the police will tell you, we don't want to solve all of that.
Yeah.
We would if we could, but we're not equipped to solve all of that. But we can solve for these things, and we welcome your help, right? So that's kind of the approach that I take when it comes to it.
Nice. So
Deep shit.
I'm gonna give you that pound, man, because I came up, man, in the Boys and Girls Club, right? It was things to do. We was playing pool every day. You know,
Yeah.
we was communicating with each other. We was playing basketball. It was things for us to do. And that has been taken away out of our community. And I know you from Chicago, right?
Originally born in Chicago, but moved to the suburbs as big.
Okay, so Chicago.
Chicago area. Because people in Chicago will ask you your block and family and all that stuff. So
I ain't
we
from
just say
Chicago.
Chicago
I ain't finna
area.
ask you none of that. I'm just simply saying, I know you grew up in a community center. I know you did. So you know the importance of what it did for you and what it can do for our community. And I appreciate you doing that for our people.
Yeah.
Well, I just think it's, I think you talk about people like Denzel Washington, like yourself, so many people, right? It's even the lady who passed, right, who had that influence on you that you were talking about earlier, right? Not today, but the sister you were talking about,
Marilyn Fisher.
Yes. Yeah, Miss Marilyn Fisher, right? I think it's not just our immediate family, our parents, right? I think it's that whole community. And when you have those community centers, right, you may talk to someone who drops something on your head that makes you look at the world completely different, and that helps you compete and be successful when you get older. So you don't want to ever take that away from kids, because at the end of the day, we have this myth in American society that everything comes from your individual family unit. But the reality is, once you leave that family unit, you gotta interact with everybody around and plug into something. So why wouldn't I want to plug a kid in earlier, sooner, rather than later, so they know how to solve these problems and deal with other
niggas,
people?
Yeah, these two niggas, I've learned that I gotta cut the fuck off, because they'll keep back and forth. I already got the sign to shut the fuck up, and I've been subtle, so now fuck the bullshit. So thank y'all for watching. Remember to subscribe, like, share the Gator Mamba show, Gator Mamba podcast. However the fuck you want to do it, it's us here doing us things. Peace out.
Deuces.